All right. In this video, I'm gonna try to explain um, a project I have been working on for many years now, which is try to fix uh, Ruby gems. So in Ruby, when the package manager is gem, so you can just do gem install foobar that will install this foobar package, which is called a gem. But the situation is tricky because there's actually two package managers that are like official. So one is gem, but the other is bundler. So gem is like more for you, like anything that you need, you just use gem. But bundler is more for projects, like um, in the JavaScript world, it will be like I think it's like package.json, and then you use npm, and then you just install the dependencies. Well, in the Ruby world, there's a gem file, and then the gem file contains the dependencies, and bundler takes care of that. So let me show you. Um, Here I have a very simple test. Actually, let's go there. So I created the gem file. Basically, I'm saying like this is a dependency. Like this is like if it was an open source project. Um, and then you just do bundler install, and it doesn't work. It says there was an error trying to write to this location. So bundler is trying to install this parse stop gem that's my own gem into this directory, and which is a system directory, and my user does not have write permissions to user leave. So uh, do we have? Yes. That's owned by root, and only root can write there, which is normal in Linux. Okay, so this is a problem with Ruby gems, right? Well, if I do gem install, so this is for me as a user, not for the package, uh, the project dependencies. It works fine. So why is, actually let's see, gem info, the gem was installed at my home directory, local share gem, whatever. Okay, so this is my user home directory, and bundler is trying to install to a system directory. So why is there a discrepancy? Why is gem installing into one location and bundler installing into another location? If I do bundler help install, where is the path? The location to install the specified gems to. This defaults to Ruby gems setting. Shares this location with Ruby gems. We'll have, but this is not true, right? Because gem install is installing to one location, and bundler is installing to a different location. So what's going on? So this is the core of the problem. The discrepancy between the standard location of gem and bundler. That's it. Actually, I created this test. bundler and then gem. Let's see actually if it works. Hmm. It says fail the test. Why? Because basically here's my home directory. Actually this is wrong, but okay, whatever. Here's the system directory and bundler installed gems there. So it's not working correctly. Like all the gems should be installed into the same location. That's why it says failed. Um, I think it should be like this, but it doesn't really matter. Um, okay, so doesn't work. All right, so maybe this is a problem on my system. It's not a problem with Ruby, Ruby gems, or bundler. It's just my Linux distribution. Okay, well, I'm using Arch Linux, and they say uh, this is considered the best way to manage gems on Arch because otherwise they might interfere with gems installed by Pacman. The recommended way to set up this by manually specifying your gem home, which then can be appended to your path. Blah, blah, blah. This is required for executable gems to work without tapping the full function. Actually, I have to fix this because they did not mention bundler. Hmm. Whatever. If you do this, actually, I wrote this and then somebody changed it and removed my um, explanation. But um, you can check where the gems are going to be installed by the default. Where is it? This is the installation directory, and if you do this suggestion by Arch Linux, then the installation directory is going to be changed to home directory. So this is good. This is what 99% of people want. But okay, maybe this is a problem on Arch Linux. Maybe they did something wrong and that's why users need to configure this. Well, this is the installation instructions of Jekyll, which is a pretty popular package Ruby project. They say you should export home. Why? To avoid installing Ruby gems packages called gems as the root user, because uh, they use bundler. Yeah, so bundler is gonna require this, and this is for Ubuntu. So it's not just Arch Linux. This is for Ubuntu as well. So, mm, well, anyway, and there has been many bug reports, but all right. So, what's going on here? Mm, If we look at the information provided by both gem and bundler, okay, let's do that. It says the installation directory is this one, even though we just saw that the gem was installed in another location. In my home directory instead of this directory. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. And then bundler also says that the installation directory is in a system directory. So what's going on? And this is where the rabbit hole starts, because it's anything but simple. Okay, so actually let me clear this up. This is my cheat sheet. So this is the starting point. Where is bundler going to install things? This is the most top level place I found. Bundler settings path.path. Okay. So which is what? User leave, right? So this match what we saw before. Let's uninstall, bundler install. Yeah, user leave, gems, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. All right, user leave gems, user leave Ruby gems, user leave Ruby gems. All right. So where is this coming from? Okay. We go to bundler. This is the Ruby gems project. Bundler, leave, bundler, settings, and let's look for path. Okay, so here, this is the path method. So it's going to iterate over some configurations. Path.system setting value for path in the settings. So I think this is no, like I don't have any configuration, so I think this is going to be nil. And then it's going to try to do this if there's some deployment flag. And then it's going to call path new. So it's going to create a new object. And this is the object. And it's going to receive a path and false. So this is going to be false. And this is going to be nil, I think, because I'm not using the deployment flag. Okay. So okay, that's just gonna set this to instance variables, but we are getting the path of the path. So we're calling this method on this object. So it returns path, which is gonna be an object which has a method called path, which is gonna be this, and then it's gonna do like talk about spaghetti code. I mean, come on. So the path is gonna, so the path is gonna go to the base path, which is gonna be this, which is gonna use explicit path, which is coming from here, which comes from here, which is gonna be, this is gonna be nil, nil, sorry, nil. So this is gonna be nil, and then it's gonna try to do this unless this is set, and this is a method, use system gems, which is gonna be true only if system path is true, which is false, so this is not gonna be true. And then it's gonna be false if it's explicit path, which is not the case, and then it's gonna check if it's feature flag bundle, whatever. Like this is gonna be again not true, so this is gonna be false. So this is not gonna do this. So it's gonna go to the next one, and then it's gonna go bundler ruby gems gem dir. Okay. So the base path. So first, let's print base path. Okay. The next, we're gonna get bundler ruby gems gem dir. And let's check all of those. All of them are the same. That's very useful. But okay, so the path is gonna come from bundler ruby gems gem dir. All right, now let's go there. Bundler live ruby gems. No, it's bundler, right? Right, because is the whatever. There's a subproject called bundler, and there's a library, but inside the library this has to be bundler. Then it has to be ruby gems, even though this project is called ruby gems. And then there is a ruby gems installation file, because bundler could be installed using another integration method, which there isn't any, but all right. And then there's this gem dir. I think that's what is what's called, right? Gem dir, yes. And that returns gem dir. Okay, so let's run that. All of them are the same. So basically, it's gem dir. So all of this stuff is from bundler, which is just getting this value, and that's what we are going to be using, and that comes from ruby gems. Okay, so like if we do pry gem dir, yeah, that's the same thing. All right, so where is this coming from? Let's close everything and then try again. So now we're going to go to the ruby gems project. Leave ruby gems self dot dir. So a gem dir is gonna be paths home. All right. The spaghetti game's coming. So this is gonna be gem paths home, right? Yes. Let's run that. Yes. Both are the same. All right. So now, what is paths? Paths is an instance variable that is gonna come from this object, path support.new. Okay, so we're gonna create an object that is coming from ruby gems path support, and there is the initializer of this path support class, which receives an environment variable, and then it says the home uh, instance variable, which is going to do this. It's going to normalize the path, and the path is going to be either one of those two things, either gem, home, or default there. Okay, so we are finally getting somewhere functional, which is not just uh, forwarding some other path. Okay, so path home, that's the real source for both gem and bundler. So it says it's going to use environment variable gem home if it's set. Good. So the home is going to be this unless gem home it's set. Let's check. Let's check them. Let's set gem home and check what we get. There it is. So that's overriding the gem home. And in fact, if we do gem emp, it's the same thing. The installation directory is overridden by that. So this is the source of everything. That's the source of the spaghetti. All right. But if that's not set, then we use default directory. All right. All right. So let's print that. And it's the same thing. So that's the default directory. So the gem home, the gem dir, the path, the base path, the path, it's the default is default dir. All right. Unless the gem home environment variable is set, and that's the reason why all of these guides are suggesting to override that environment variable. All right, we're getting somewhere. So this is for bundler and this is for gem. So all of these are the same thing, okay? But now let's try to do something useful. Let's try to fix the problem. So if the problem is that no, gemdir is returning a system directory, and gemdir comes from path homes, and path homes comes from default directory, then this should return a user directory instead. So this is how I'm gonna Ruby is like an override to use that instead of my system Ruby gems. Sorry, we're not gonna specify any environment variable, and then the installation directory is correct. And the installation directory is correct. And gemdir is correct. So that's it. Like that fixes everything. How many years or decades of problems are fixed by just this line? That's it. A single line fixes everything. On all systems, not just Linux system, Mac OS, Windows, whatever, this fixes everything. But that changes the behavior. So if I run the test expect this default directory and I'm changing gem dir to this. That's gonna break all the tests and it's gonna possibly break on some systems. So this is not, this should not be done, at least by default. So here I have a branch where I try to do this a little bit more properly. So instead of changing default dir, I'm changing it to user dir. I'm changing it to default install. And default install is a new method which returns default dir. So basically, there is no change, right? It's the same thing. Before it returned default dir, and after it returns default dir. Actually, right, Ruby lib is what it was here, right? Yes, okay. So here I don't, my environment variables are clean. So let's run the test. While we run the test, it takes a while. Okay, so I think like we have a good understanding or of the three of all the variables that might affect the install location both in bundler and in gem. Actually, I think I have there's another one, this bundle path. Huh. All right. But anyway, all of these are the same. So that's the overview of what is the situation. But that's not the full picture, because when I installed gems with gem, the installation directory was correct. But when I did the same with bundler, it wasn't. So we are still missing something. But anyway, so all the tests passed, which is expected because this patch should not have changed any behavior. And yet it fixes everything. Why? Because let's look at a package, like a distribution package. Operating system. So these are overrides that every distribution can do. Most distributions do this, but that's not really relevant. Let's just get it out of the way. So this is a package, an example package, where I'm overriding default install to user dir. So this does exactly the same thing. And this fixes everything. But only on the systems that do this. Like if a distribution chooses not to do this, then the default directory is going to be default dir. But for the distributions that chooses to apply this override, then the installation directory is going to be a user directory. And that's it. Like that fixes everything for both Ruby gems and bundler. But Still, we have not really explored why there was a difference. Mm, when you do gem install, this is mapped to lib ruby gems commands install. Yes. So this is the install command. But if it only were that simple, because this in turn uses this depend installer, and it passes some options. Okay, so leave ruby gems install installer. mm, I think it should be here, process options. Right, so this is the code that process the options, and there's many. So, and actually many of those options change the installation directory. So the first one is I don't see it. Install there, install there. I don't actually see it. Oh, there. So this is where gems are going to be installed first and foremost. Okay. So parse opt. So if I specify this location, that's where the gems are going to be installed regardless of anything else. So that's like an override. But this is an option specific for gem install. Then, if you don't specify that, it's gonna do this, which depends on build root, and build root is another option, which is for maintaining packages, so let's ignore that for now. Then there's this complex logic. User install might have three states: true, false, or nil. So when you do git install, you can do user install. So by default, gemdir is gonna be this one, which is the same thing as default dir. But you can install to this other location by specifying this flag. And then you can say like no user install. So if you specify user install, you want this. If you specify install no so this is user install, this is no user install. So that's the, it will be much more clear if there was an option of system install, but whatever. No user install is the same thing as um, system install. So if you specify it, it's just gonna use this user there. Now, if you don't specify it, then it's gonna go to this other logic, which is like if it's it. So this is true, and this could be either false or nil, right? So if it's false, this is not gonna do anything. But if it's nil, then it's gonna go to this other step. default user install. So here we go, more spaghetti. Leave Ruby gems. I think it's default. Yes. So now we have another function. Enables automatic installation into user directory. And it's more convoluted because now we have to check the environment home, even though whatever, we already checked that somewhere else. Now, if gemdir exists and it is not writable, then we're gonna return true. So gemdir is this, which is exists and is not writable by me. So this is gonna return true. And if this returns true, so this is true because this is nil, because okay, it will be like this, like if I say no user install, that will skip all this logic. But if I don't specify, then it's gonna go into this other step and it's gonna return true. So this returns true, so it's gonna use the user directory instead. So basically, if I don't have write access to this directory, it's gonna use this other directory, which is actually better than just trying to install here, but it's not the best, and I'm gonna explain why later. But anyway, so that will explain why when I do gem install, it's using a different directory, but that's actually not the case here because I didn't see this warning. Something else happened. Right, so let's do that again. Just installed it, no warning. What's going on? The spaghetti doesn't end here. If I look at my package of my Linux distribution, there is this operating system override. Okay, this is standard. Most distributions do this. The real change is here. So this is specifying some operating system defaults based on this flag, and this flag is basically saying like if I do build root something, right, which I'm not, so we can ignore that and say sorry, like this. So it's gonna do this hash, it's gonna return this hash, and what this does is like basically for every gem command it's gonna add this user install option even if I didn't specify it. That's what this does. So by default this is the same thing as this. I could say like no user install and then override that, but I'm not doing that. So what happens then? So this is gonna be true because this comes from parse options, and parse option is gonna say, so this is gonna be true. We go to this configuration, this is gonna be true, so this is nil, so but this is like double negative, so this is gonna be ignored. We're gonna go here, user install, user install is gonna be set by default, so this is gonna return user dir, which is this. And that's the reason why gem install is installing to my home directory. But this user install there is in live RubyGems installer, which is part of the RubyGems command, not the bundler command. So this works, but this doesn't. Sorry. Yeah. And this is already problematic. I mean, forget about all this spaghetti code and all of the different environment variables and configurations that on whether it's a Ruby Gems configuration or it's a bundle configuration. Then we need to consider like the operating system overrides, the like Linux distribution overrides, and this override affects only Ruby Gems, not bundler. So it's a mess. It's a mess. I don't know any better way to describe it. But let's suppose that this was not here, and let's suppose that this directory was writable. Then we will go to gemdir, and then gemdir is the default, and that's where if we override that, then everything will work, which is what I just showed. Just to verify that this is indeed the case, I'm going to temporarily remove this override. Okay, so let's just check again. Gem install parse opt worked. Now let's uninstall it. Now let's remove this operating system override. So this is not going to be using the user home directory now. Now we get the warning, because this is not writable. So that's the difference. So in theory, Arch Linux could remove this, but I think it's better than specify this, because there's actually a corner case. But anyway, right. I mean, I'm thinking about if I should demonstrate how it could fail, but that would require a bunch of steps. So actually, no. I think it's better that I show it because of the corner case. So let's uninstall. Let's switch to the master branch. Let's go to the installer. Let's go to this function. And let's remove this check. If we do that, now we have to use that directory. Try to install, doesn't work. You don't have write permissions for this directory. So there it is. And the corner case is if you want to install as root, because as root, you will not want to install here. Actually, let me show it because so as root, all right. This is the default directory where gems are supposed to be installed. But if we change the default to the user directory, this is the user directory, which is still owned by root, but this is specific to the root user. So this is the correct location where to install gems by default as root, not here, even if you have write permissions. So the code, this code is still wrong. Okay, so we have an overview of the issues. Let's reset all of these. Reset this. Clear this. Yes, I think we are gonna need this as well. Let's uninstall the gem. Actually, no, we didn't install it. This is for later. Okay. Now let's look at what more people are saying. We already looked at what Arch Linux suggests, what Jekyll suggests for Ubuntu, which is to set the gem home environment variable. Okay, so this is a commit in bundler. First pass at getting bundler to play well when gem home is owned by root. So what are they doing? It requires sudo. That's ominous. So sudo hacks, that doesn't sound good. If bundler requires sudo, then use sudo to create a directory and then move some files to that directory. I'm come from the Linux world, and to use sudo, this is not even a configuration. This is not something like, okay, like the user decide. No, this is by default. I mean, this is heresy to me. I just did it. Like, if you, I mean, we don't have time to go through all of the discussions that have happened throughout the years, but many people complain about this behavior, and the maintainers of bundler basically just say like, if you have permissions to write to the system directory, then what's the problem? Why not use sudo? It looks like they come from Mac OS, and maybe it's fine there. I don't think it's fine even there, but I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, and bundler is not a project that is supposed to run only on Mac. It's supposed to run on Linux as well. So this guy, this is okay. So this is what this was in 2010. This guy in 2020, he's complaining. The command sudo should not be called in this codebase at all, except maybe in tests and documentation. In 20 years of system, let me increase this. In 20 years of system administration, this is the only program I've used that calls sudo like this. There is no need to try to be helpful. Everybody knows you need to escalate privileges to do system-wide things. Just rip it out, please. That is the only possible fix. And he lists like everywhere. Pip, npm, uh, salsa, what is this? App, apt-get, RPM, Rust, Composer, Haskell. Nobody uses sudo by default. This guy, this guy's just, oh, you don't have right access to sudo. Like, let's just use sudo. To You don't have right access to the system directory. Let's just use sudo. There's Superficially, it might not seem like a big deal, but there's two cases, which I mean, there's a reason why nobody does this. First case, which was the case for me, you can have a configuration where your user doesn't need a password. So you just do bundler install, and then it installs, it uses sudo and installs by default into some system directory without asking a password, because bundler is not gonna ask for a password, and sudo is not gonna ask for a password. So that's problem number one. But even if you have a more default configuration where the password is asked, you can do sudo some command, type the password, and that password is cached, and then you do bundle install, and then it doesn't ask for a password again because you already just did sudo. So anyway, fortunately, they removed this feature after I made a very scolding article explaining why they shouldn't be doing this, how many people complained through the years. Actually, let's do that. Ruby sudo. This is not like just one guy. Totally unacceptable on my system. Require confirmation. Bundle shouldn't have a dependency on sudo. Sudo check has issues. Bundle install should only bake sudo when necessary. Like all of these are unnecessary sudo requirement with custom Ruby. Like all of these are, each one is a bug report where they just say like works as expected, works as expected. Bundler doesn't honor user install, it's slightly different, but it's the same thing. Bundler doesn't use the right gems location. Actually, that was mine. Ask for permission before using password less sudo. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, and it's endless discussions, and it doesn't matter how many times people explain it to them. Anyway, a few days later, 5 days after I wrote this, they removed the sudo hack. Yeah, 10 years and then 5 years, 5 days after I write this, they remove it. It's just a coincidence, right? Yeah, sure. But anyway, so that's the mentality we are dealing with. But let's keep in mind that this is bundler developers. There's also the Ruby gem developers who are different people with different mentality. They never did this sudo kind of stuff. But anyway, so this is the patch that enabled sudo for bundler. Let's continue. Add a way to disable auto sudo. Um, right, so this is where this guy explained why nobody does that. So there's a bunch of discussions, but this is the important part for me because they say like, why don't we make bundler respect user install? Mm, so this user install can be configured by default in a number of ways. My distribution does this way, but this only affects bundler. Sorry, RubyGem. Why not make it affect bundler as well? Because these are two completely different code bases. And here I provided a patch to actually do it, to show why it's a hack, because we have to go into a different code base and get some configuration, split it, find if this was there. So that's gonna be true. Then change some directory if that was true. That seems like a complete hack, but anyway, it's doable. What happened? I opened this other issue ticket for discussing how to specifically handle having bundler respect user install, since that seems to be what's preventing remove it out sudo for restricting it to macOS if that's still needed. Okay. Okay, so I missed the parentheses there, but okay, let's go there. So this was about a way to disable auto sudo, and then here we have something that is completely different. Have bundle respect RubyGem's user install, and that's a tendency. They just close. Actually, let's close this. Oops. They just close one ticket, open another one, and there's no follow up because it's for something that is completely different. But anyway, this one is still open, so I'm just gonna leave it there. Let's just go through a few of these. This is from 2010. Sudo is totally unacceptable on my system. This guy is saying like, basically, if you set gem home, then bundle will respect it. That's why everybody's doing it, because the bundle developers did not want to set up sensible defaults, so users have to find workarounds. So this is the same one as this. Okay, so this is an issue I reported in 2020. Bundler Ruby gems install directory mismatch. I already explained why that's different, and I linked to some of the tickets that have been raised throughout the years, 1, 2, 3, 4. But as I explained in my article, there's many more. What does this guy say? This guy is Hiroshi. He's one of the main developers. So I say, many people don't install to the default directory, but to the user directory. In fact, it's the default on many distributions. What does he say? I don't think so. The users who are using the default package provided many of Linux distribution are minority. Also see this thing, which is about Ruby on Rails, which is not Ruby. There's many Ruby users who don't use Rails. Rails is just one package. I'm Ruby programmer over the 20 plus years, and my company also didn't use it. We use the custom runtime build like Ruby build. Okay. What is Ruby build? Ruby build a tool to download, compile, and install Ruby on Unix-like systems. Who is provided? Who is who is the main contributor? Him. So he's basically saying, if you use my tool, which I use, then there is no problem. So if you don't use my tool, then it's your problem, I guess. And he's ignoring all the people who use Linux distributions, who are a minority. Who are minority. So I say no satisfactory resolution from the development team, and he says this comment is a little offensive, and he bans me permanently from the project because he found my comment a little offensive. So why is actually it's not this one. Why is this patch not applied? Because this guy doesn't care about Linux users, and he banned me for saying no satisfactory resolution from the development team in 2020, which is 10 years after the initial report. And it's now 2025 and they still have not fixed the problem. Bundler still installs into the wrong location by default. So I don't know if I should go through all of these. So this is the reality, I think. I think this is true that there has not been a satisfactory resolution. I'm just saying that this is the reality. So I discussed with David Rodriguez, and it's kind of productive, but then he comes back and say this is the final notice: be honest, respectable, and collaborative. Okay, so I am being honest, right? If I'm speaking the truth, I think they have not resolved this. I'm being honest. I'm respectable. I'm not disrespecting anybody. I'm just saying things as they are. But ideas, on the other hand, don't have feelings and are meant to be criticized. So what's the problem with criticizing ideas? And I'm being collaborative. I've sent multiple patches addressing the feedback on those patches that is called collaboration, because actually this is not the only patch I've sent. If actually let's do this. These are all of the branches I have on this project, not just on this fix alone, because along the way I found other issues like these. Some tests were failing for me, and I fixed this. I found this other problem. There's many problems that I found. It's not just with the install command. The uninstall command is also broken. So many issues I found. And this patch, so this is the minimal patch, but I have a more complete patch here. I provided both of those, and these are not the first version. This is probably the fourth or fifth. So, and I sent all of them. So, and I discussed them. So this is collaborative. And he says, this is the final notice. I say, oh what? You are going to willingly harm the users of Ruby gems that have been reporting these issues for more than 10 years. What you do is up to you. If you fix this, great. If not, I will take this ticket as evidence and suggest a hacky solution downstream to my distribution maintainers, since you leave us no other choice. What you are doing is called tone policing, and Okay, there's a bunch of explanation about this, and it distracts from the user issue at hand. It will be much more productive if you concentrate on the bug rather than my tone, but that's your choice. And he banned me permanently, and that's it. So that was my last interaction with them. David Rodriguez created a new, closed this, like locked this, closed it, created a new one, add a way to disable auto sudo. But this was what about the discrepancy between bundler and Ruby gems. Even if auto sudo is disabled, this is still wrong because the attempt will still be made. So this new issue has nothing to do with that previous issue, but that's what they always do. Okay. So that was in 2020, but that's not the first time I interacted with them. In 2013, I sent a bug report. Bundler doesn't use the right gems location. Basically, my complaint is that the documentation says this defaults to the gem home, which is the location that gem installs gem 2. But as I explained, that's not true. So I say like either like correct the documentation to say that that's not true or fix it. But anyway, they didn't do anything. They just closed the ticket, and then this guy. I came here and read the discussion. I agree with Philip Peck. That's me. It's confusing that bundle install doesn't install to the same location as gem install when using etc gem arc in the manner specified. Now, it's not just this, like Arch Linux is not using this method anymore and the issue is still there. This guy says, I agree as well, it doesn't need to be the default way bundler handles gem install, but there should be a flag that either looks for user install setting in gem arc or some other way to follow where gem install actually installs things too. I mean, there's endless comments like this. They just closed it. There's another one, make your Ruby gem install to user install by default. If this is done, then that will percolate to bundler as well as I showed. So this was 2015. Last comment was 2020. And then this person says, after 8 years, it's finally done. As of this commit, if gem home isn't set and the default install directory is not writable, Ruby gems says gem paths home to user there. This commit was basically completely redone, but it's basically this default user install. So it's basically this. It's changing the install location if the directory is writable. But if you are as root or if you have write permissions, then you're still gonna be installing to the wrong location. And this was not about that. This was about changing the default. So this girl closed the issue without fixing it because he did something completely unrelated. Okay, so it's a matter of time before somebody reopens because it's not fixed. Here's another one. Make user install as default. Makes no sense to go to this discussion because we already know they're just gonna close it, open a new one, and never actually resolve it. Closing in favor of this. Okay, let's go to that one. Make gem install fallback to user installation directory if default gem is not writable. This was about change the default. And once again, this is just changing the behavior depending on the if the directory is writable. These are not the same thing. I mean, this is an endless loop. Okay, so this is where I was banned because I said no satisfactory resolution. Okay, we already saw that one. Now, this could be fixed in Linux distributions, but in Arch Linux, I provided many solutions, and here's where the package maintainer says, if bundler still doesn't adhere, that's under assistance of upstream, and we should neither patch Ruby core itself nor run Ruby commands in the profile to somehow work around this issue. If users want to do this, they can set it up themselves or ask bundler to do something more reasonable. I understand that they explicitly do not want this, but then it's not on downstream, that means he, to provide this feature. Okay, so he says we should neither patch Ruby core. Why? Doesn't explain why. And here is a patch to the Ruby core. So they already do this. Well, actually they did it in the past, but okay, so this patch is not there anymore, but they did it. But this one is still there. So they are already patching the core for no gain. This doesn't actually help users at all. My patch does actually help users, and they don't want to apply it because they shouldn't apply patches, even though they already do. That's the logic. So, I don't even know. Like, what's going on? Like, everyone is just doesn't care about users or and what are the defaults and what do they have to do. Like, remember, everyone has to set this environment variable in order for things to work. And this has been a problem for years, decades. Okay, so there's so many attempts I have done. This is the simplest version of the patch. But just to finish this, it's like, so, okay, too long didn't read. What should you do? I've actually written so much about this, but basically, it's something like this. You set gem home to the output of this command. Ruby puts gem user there. That's it. That fixes everything. Why? Because then in gem, the default directory is going to be this one, and in bundler, the default directory is going to be that one. So that fixes everything. But a more proper fix is what I already did in my, actually let's go to another workspace. This is my Arch Linux package in AUR, Arch User Repository. Basically, I apply my patch and then I add this override and everything works. No need to change anything, no need to set any environment variable. Actually, let's build it um, just to check that it builds correctly. This is a warning just because the path is like too too big. This plus a bunch of other stuff. This is the patch which is more complete because um, it's changing the defaults not in one place but in multiple places, and then making sure that all the tests pass. Change from default dir to the default install. That's the main change. And a few other uh, cleanups because the situation changes if you are using this build root flag, which is for packagers, and this default install. It makes no sense to check it twice. Should be checked only once and in the right place that is used by everyone. But anyway, so this patch is actually makes everything work. Mm. So remove Ruby gems and install my package, which is correct. Now this is the correct location, and it's going to be used by both Ruby gems and bundler. Bundler install. Works fine. Let's run my test. Works fine. Everything works fine. All that is needed is this. That's it. And just because I was banned and actually it's the other way around. And they keep closing the tickets and reopening them. I created this one in my own fork to keep track of the progress. Yeah, people are following. So this is the latest outstanding ticket in the Ruby Gems project, like upstream. To end, let's just take a look at this insanity. Have bundler respect Ruby Gems user install. I already showed why it makes no sense, because this is one part of the code base, bundler is another part of the code base, and there's no communication between those. But anyway, immediately after making that suggestion, this guy says, I'm a big fan of bundle, and I actually set bundle config by the bundle globally myself. It keeps the gems in the application directory and puts them somewhere that everyone is already ignoring in Git. So basically, He made a configuration, works for him, so everybody else, screw you. Like, fine, like if they want to change the default to this, actually that's better than the current situation. I don't think it's ideal, but it's better. But what about having bundler respect Ruby gems user install? This has nothing to do with that. And the rest of the discussion, nobody said anything about respecting user installed. Everything everybody's saying is about this dot bundle. Um, Actually, he's saying bundler gems should not have user install as runtime flag. It's like nothing everybody said has anything to do with this. So what's gonna happen? They're gonna close this and follow up in another ticket jet again because they cannot just apply this patch which fixes everything and everyone will be happy. No, they have to keep discussing forever stuff that is never gonna happen and then suggest things that don't fix the issue. All right. So yeah, Ruby gems ham gem home. You don't have to apply my patch or install my package. All you have to do is this. Everybody has to do this because, well, you know why? Because the maintainers of the Ruby gems think you don't exist. Nobody uses the default Ruby. Nobody uses Linux distributions. And if you are not using their installation tools or their personal configuration, then you are just an idiot. I mean, that's it. Yeah. All right. So just do this if you use Ruby. Cheers.